Hello Sector Watchers, welcome to the show. This is the 71st episode of Sector Spotlight on Tuesday the 16th of March, recording it the Monday prior. We have a full show today. Of course, we're going to do a quick overview of rotations that took place last week in both asset classes and sectors. But then we will pick from the mailbag, and we're actually going to spend the better part of the show talking about one question, but it's actually a big question of someone who describes his trading plan and wants to know how he can use RRG to match that trading plan. We will also look at combining daily and weeklies. We will look at scans and how you can use a scan and throw that at an RRG. I think it has a lot of elements that a lot of people are looking for. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on that, and I hope you enjoy it. If so, let me know either in the comments below or via one of the handles on the screen. Let's start with an overview of rotations of last week. Left hand side we have the asset classes, and if you look at the returns of last week, then real estate V&Q tops the list with 5.5%, followed by the stock market, which is back on track with a gain of 3.3%, beating the benchmark, which went up only 1.8. Everything else, including commodities that have been doing very well recently, are now lagging or have been lagging the balanced index fund last week. And at the bottom of the list are government bonds and corporate bonds. Not a surprise. Good news is that the rotation and the tail for ITOT are back on track, and they're on their way back to the leading quadrant, confirming the current uptrend of the stock market and the preference for stocks over bonds in our asset allocation. If we quickly go to the RRG for sectors, on the daily scale here, last 5 trading days ending the Friday, March the 12th, then we can see that it was a very good week for consumer discretionary. As a matter of fact, Tesla had a pretty good week. Real estate on top of the list there as well, just like it was in asset classes. And then we have utilities, materials, industrials, and financials, all that stuff that's on the right hand side of the screen, doing pretty well, outperforming the S&P 500, which gained 2.7% last week. Lagging staples, technology, communication services, healthcare, and energy. Pretty big spread between discretionary and energy, roughly 5%. I think the biggest theme that's still going on here is the relative weakness of technology and also discretionary, especially when you look at it from a longer term perspective. If we bring up the weekly RRG here, then you can see that discretionary is actually moving into the lagging quadrant and pushing further into it despite the hiccup that we see here. I'm not sure whether that rally that we saw last week will be enough to save discretionary going further into the lagging quadrant. We'll have to wait and see. Same goes for technology, which is following discretionary into the lagging quadrant, and it's picking up a little bit on the daily RRG, but the longer term trend, and we looked at the chart last week, that didn't change much, has turned around, and relative strength for technology is weakening versus the S&P 500. I think the biggest theme, and we're going to wrap it up relatively quickly now and not go over all the sectors, because I want to talk a lot about that question and a little bit of educational content your way this week. But I think that the biggest theme that's going on in the markets right now is the renewed pickup in value over growth, and I can actually look at the chart, because it's a predefined chart here. So if you look at growth versus value, then you see it's a very clear preference for value over growth stocks. And if we do that here on the right hand side as well, and we look at it from a daily point of view, then you can see that value lost a little bit last week. That's due to the strength of discretionary, obviously. but it's still far to the right, and there is plenty and plenty of opportunity for value to actually rotate through weakening and back up and just come back into line with that weekly uptrend of value stocks. If you're interested in a more in-depth look at that, just go to the Chart Watchers newsletter of last week, where the article is, the name is Value, Growth to Value, with a little big wink to 007, of course. Hey, you got to do something. Anyway, here's an article that goes into depth on value versus growth and how you can play that. Let's now start over and move to the mailbag section of the show. This question in the mailbag comes from Tibor, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And it's actually a rather long question, but I want to talk about it because I think it's an interesting question. Let's just go over the various parts because it's actually threefold. Got a few questions in regard to utilizing RRG for buy and sell signals, differences between weekly and daily view of the RRG chart. Well, that's the combination of those questions is this is wrapped up in a couple of pretty clear, defined questions, but you may be struggling with the same because I got, well, not on a daily basis, not even on a weekly basis, but quite regularly similar type of questions. So item number one, I noticed that when I look at assets that are in the leading quadrant of the RRG on a weekly view, that the assets are typically far into the, and he writes oversold, but I already exchanged some emails with Tibor, and he actually meant overbought, so that's a typo there. Far into the overbought state, and hence I don't buy them. My trading plan is to buy when an increasing ADX trending up with stochastics and RSI in a rising pattern, but not in the overbought state. Due to my trading plan, I typically look at assets that are in the improving quadrant and hopefully trend into leading to match my trading plan to the information that the RRG is giving me. What kind of guidance can you give on this? Is the overbought technical indicator, RSI or stochastic, not a good tool to use with RRG? Can you share your views on what type of trading plans match well to the RRG tool? We're going to go into depth into that question. And it actually relates to the second item, where he says that due to the items in comment number one, I've started to look at a strategy for swing trading with the RRG, in which I look at the daily view rather than the weekly view, and buy when I see assets in the leading quadrant. As I only hold the asset for a short period of time, this has been a profitable method to take advantage of the price and momentum of the asset. In addition, it is meeting my trading plan of buying when not oversold, or overbought, that has to be. So buying when not overbought and strong ADX, RSI stochastic trending up. However, I would think I have a risk of potentially buying assets that are far into the lagging quadrant on the weekly view of the RRG. Hence, longer term, I could be at risk. Can you speak to swing and long-term trading using the daily and weekly views? How should the daily and weekly views of the RRG be used in terms of a trading plan? What he means here is that when he's swing trading, there is a chance, or a risk that the item on the weekly RRG is far and deep into the lagging quadrant, but it's fulfilling the criteria of his trading plan, so a strong ADX, rising ADX, and an uptrending RSI. Basically what you're doing is you're buying a rally in a downtrend. And that may not, if you know what you're doing, that's fine, but usually you want to trade in the direction of the trend. So even if you're swing trading, you want to know the trend on your higher time frame, and you wait until both go in sync and you pick up the short-term trade. The third simple question on weekly daily views in the RRG. Can I interpret the daily view of an asset as a mini rotation within the weekly view trend of the asset? And I had never actually thought about explaining it like this as a mini rotation, but it is exactly what it is. So it is indeed a simple question, and the answer to that is yes. Let me start with the third, explaining the third question of Tibor, and that is the mini rotation. So technology, XLK, actually showed a pretty nice example of that quite recently. This is the weekly tail of XLK over 6 weeks here on the left-hand side. And here is the daily tail over 30 days of XLK on the right-hand side. So the 6 weeks matches about roughly 30 trading days. If we look at the movement of the weekly, then we see that it went into one of those very sharp rotations. So it's we're now back to mid-Feb, and XLK was nicely moving into the leading quadrant, and then all of a sudden it hooked back down and it rapidly started to deteriorate. So that move occurred, let's say, the week of February 8, 16, and 22. So we need to position our daily around those times. So basically we want to have it ending on February 22. So we go here, scroll back to Feb 22, and you see how that rapid hook here actually translates into a very nice, and I love that. I'm gonna borrow that from you, Tibor, a mini rotation. So it's a mini rotation on the daily that translates into a sharp hook or sharp reversal on the weekly RRG. So the question to item number 3 is yes. Let's back to the the more interesting and more intriguing part of his questions. So Tibor's trading plan, the good news is that he has a trading plan and he actually knows it's pretty well defined. So I translated it as he's looking for stocks that have a rising ADX and a rising RSI. Now RSI is overbought, oversold indicator, just RSI stochastic, doesn't really matter. So I started to work with the RSI. So RSI, overbought, oversold, but it's also telling you something about the trend. When an RSI goes up, essentially means the trend's up. When an RSI is overbought, it actually means it's a very strong trend upward. If RSI is below 30, i.e. oversold, it just means that the stock is trending down very strongly. So we cannot scan for RRG values yet. I've got good hopes that we can improve on that, especially with new ACP getting up to speed right now. But for the time being, we cannot do that. What we can do is flip it around. So we can actually scan for other parts of our trading plan and then use the RRG to have a quick look, a quick view of how that just created universe of stocks that match our trading plan or the criteria of our trading plan look on an RRG. So what I did is I actually put together a quick scan here following Tibor's rules, and I'm using the S&P 500. I mean, you can do it for anything, but just, S&P 500, easy peasy. We're looking for stocks that have a volume over 10,000 shares a day, just to make sure that there is enough liquidity there. And then I want to have an RSI. I use the 9-day RSI. I think that's a little bit, it responds a little bit faster than the 14-day that everybody uses, or a lot of people use, and what the default is. So I usually work with the 9-day RSI. And I want that to be below 60. Because, as Tibor said, I don't want it to be in overbought state yet. And I know that 70 is overbought state, or higher than 70, but as soon as you go above 70, then stuff is already, it's been going up for a while. So I decided, but you can change that. I mean, it's totally fine. I just arbitrarily set it to 60. So I want everything to be below 60. But I want that same 9-day RSI to be higher than that 9-day RSI of 5 days ago. Why 5? Just because I want it to go up. It could be 3, it could be 1, it could be 9, it could be 4, it could be any number. Just 5 days, in my mind, makes sense, because you could have this, dip going on, and I think if you have like 5 days, then you have sort of a nice turnaround possibility. So the RSI needs to be below 60. And I want that RSI of today to be higher than the RSI of 5 days ago. For the ADX, I can actually capture that in one line, because I want the ADX line over 14 days, I'm using the default here, you can change that to anything you like, to be higher than the ADX line of 5 days ago. So I basically want that ADX to move up. And actually that rule makes sense, because you now have a trend that goes up and you have the trend getting stronger, because ADX is measuring trends, measuring absolute trends. And when I ran this, I got quite a lot of results. So I decided to add a little condition, and that is that the price of the stock needs to be above its 20-day moving average, just to make sure that the price is also in an uptrend. So RSI, price, and then the ADX, just to narrow down the universe a little bit. Right, so you can stick that into the scan engine, and you can run the scan, and as you can see, it results in 22 names that match those criteria. Now, what you can then do is actually store these results in a new chart list, or what I did, replace a list, because I've already played around with this, and I created a list, a chart list, SSL Mailbag Tibor 210315. So I'm going to overwrite that one. So that chart list now holds 22 names. And now I can actually view this list, because these are the stocks that match my criteria that we've just described in the scan engine. And instead of looking at the individual charts of the summary, I want to see this as an RRG. And here is my weekly RRG. Now, there's a few things that you can say, because the scan uses daily data. And this RRG is now using weekly data. And here comes the combination, or the mixing, of Tibor's question 1 and Tibor's question 2. Because you can actually try to match those two. If we stick with 1, let's call that the trend following strategy. And as you can see, actually there's not a lot of tails that are deep into the leading quadrant in overbought state following these criteria, especially on the weekly RRG. There's a few that are on the right hand side. Maybe CB Chubb is highest and moving right. That could be an overbought potentially, but the others are either in a pause and correcting within the uptrend, potentially moving lower, or they are in the early stages of turning around and picking up a new relative uptrend, or they are already improving. Now what you can do is you can actually load up the chart on the right hand side. And this is where ACP actually comes in very handy, because ACP allows you to actually run a scan inside ACP. So here's my scan that I just described, and if I run it here, you see that I get my 22 results. But the good news and the cool thing is that I can now actually just click on the ticker symbol and I can have my chart, so I don't have to create a chart list. Here's my chart list right in front of me. If I want to throw that in RRG, I still need the chart list, but I can actually now have side by side my chart and my RRG and see what's going on. So let's go over the RRG and use the RRG to pick the stocks that we may like. So I already said CB might be interesting, and here be careful, we're looking at a daily chart and here's a weekly RRG. So we're looking at the long-term trend and trying to pick up whether we want to join that trend or not. If you look at the daily chart here of CB, then the RSI is going up, ADX is going up, but this looks like a little bit of a divergence to me. So I wouldn't actually buy that right now. I would be quite reluctant. That's not, for me, not a good, it doesn't fit my way of thinking, so to say. So let's go over a few others and see if we can find some nice names. I've got CB, NASDAQ, could be. It's rolling over on the weekly, so it's taking a little break, and I can see why that is. But the RSI is bottoming out, it's above 50, moving higher, and the ADX is starting to pick up. So that's a potential buy. We got CBOE, not much momentum there, but the RSI is moving higher, the ADX is starting to pick up, so that trend seems to be picking up some steam, and we're working our way higher above this resistance level dating back to sometime in May. So we can go over, this could be an interesting one because it's far away to the left but starting to move. That's interesting because you see what's happening. You see that it is still, this is relative, this is price, so you gotta put that together in your head. But it's picking up against the S&P 500, and you can see that the RSI is improving. It's pushing against 70. If it moves above 70, that means it's in an uptrend, and you see that we're sort of pushing against overhead resistance here. When that's taken out, that's definitely a bullish signal. We're already above the 20-day moving average, and the trend starts to pick up. So that could be an interesting one. Well, I'm not going to do all of them, but I hope you get the idea that you can actually have the RRG on the one side, and you can have the results of your scan on both the RRG and the chart list, and work your way and see whether it fits your trading plan and whether it fits your risk appetite and whether you think it's a good trade. Let's quickly go because there's a few that's really nice. Breaking out here on its way to all-time high levels. ADX actually nicely trending higher around 28, and the RSI is pushing against 70, so not overbought yet. Fits Tibor's trading plan, fits the improvement on the RRG. Potential candidate, especially because it looks like we just put in a new higher low and we started to move higher. Let's see, potentially QRVO. That's one of those that are, in a new uptrend and it's starting to move higher. So we have this whole run up. That's what caused that tail to move into leading. Now we have this consolidation, and it looks like we're starting to come out of that consolidation. So if QRVO is curling back up, then this could be a very nice trading idea. The one that I actually wanted to show you is McDonald's here. McDonald's, inside lagging, but already starting to trend up. And if you look at the price chart, you see that it's coming out of a broad range, corrective range, and you see that the RSI is pushing above, levels around 60 and starting to move higher, and you see that the ADX is starting to pick up. So this could be a very early call, and QRVO could be more of a mature trend. This is how I would work with the weekly trends and the short-term trading plan. Now, if you want to bring in section 2, where it's more about swing trading and how to combine daily and weekly, I would actually go and put the daily and the weekly RRGs next to each other. Let me do that right here and make one the daily and keep this the weekly. Now let's put it on symbol so you can actually very rapidly select both of them. And here you can see, here is the daily, I needed to update that. And you can see that on the weekly, it's actually moving into the lagging quadrant. The faltering of downside momentum is because of this hiccup in the daily, but it's already starting to roll over. So when ALLE continues to roll over and moves back here, then that could be a potential short because you got the trend picking up in the same direction. Let's look at for a potential uptrend. So here we got CB, Chubb, hooked up. You see why that is, because we had this tick up, but now we're losing again. And the question is whether this can make that. So only when CB on the daily would continue to curl back up, so through weakening and back up into leading, and join the leading quadrant together with the weekly, then it becomes a potential interesting trade to do a short-term trade, to jump on the train for a shorter ride. CBOE, probably not a good idea. Let's see here, HRL, what have we got here? HRL. So here you got HRL in improving and here in leading. So that could be a potential short-term trade, even though the fact that it is to the left, but both tails are pointing to the same leading quadrant. So let's finalize this with a look at HRL on the price chart. And what you see here is ADX picking up, and it looks like we're coming out of Hormel Foods Group, out of a bottom formation. I'd say there is upside to 50 for this stock, so that's $2 on 48. It's nice, 4%, and potentially higher. So this is how I would combine actually the daily and the weekly RRG and use the scan to match, in this case, Tiber's trading plan, but I hope you can make your own, and use StockCharts ACP feature to actually very rapidly walk through all these individual charts in combination with the RRG. I hope this helped you setting it up. Keep your questions coming. I love to talk about it. Either I write to you in person or we talk about it in Sector Spotlight in the mailbag. But I'm going to leave it at this for Tyber's question, and I hope that it was an answer that he was looking for. And that was it, ladies and gentlemen. This wraps up Sector Spotlight for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to give us a like or leave your comments in the section below. If you're watching on demand and you have anything to say, please use any of the handles on the screen right now. I hope you enjoyed the show. Sector Spotlight airs every Tuesday from 10:30 to 11 a.m. Eastern. And for now, stay safe, and I hope to see you back next week.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.